At last, a possible new break in the mystery of little Madeleine McCann, the girl with the magical eyes, 3 years old when she vanished on a family vacation in Portugal. Now, after 7 years, a revelation about a possible suspect. ABC's Lama Hassan with the new lead tonight.
This story may be one of the most heartbreaking cases you will ever hear. Imagine putting your child to bed during a family vacation, sunset painting the sky, the peaceful sound of the ocean in the distance. You tuck them in, kiss their forehead, and step out for dinner just 50 meters away. You return an hour later, and their bed is empty. A soft toy lies abandoned. The window is wide open. There's no sign of your little girl. That's exactly what happened to Kate and Jerry McCann on the night of May 3rd, 2007. Their 3-year-old daughter, Madeleine, vanished from their holiday apartment in the seaside village of Praia da Luz, Portugal. No broken glass, no forced entry, just silence, confusion, and a void that has haunted the world ever since. The case sparked the largest and most expensive missing child investigation in British history. It triggered a media storm, drew in the Pope, MI5, and the FBI. Millions followed every twist. And yet, to this day, no one knows for certain what happened to Madeleine McCann. Today, on Crime Line, we're diving deep into the mystery that became known as the crime of the century. A case full of red herrings, media chaos, and one terrifying question. What really happened to Madeleine that night? Let's begin with the little girl behind the headlines. Her name was Madeleine Beth McCann. Born on May 12, 2003, in Leicester, England, she was just a few days away from her 4th birthday when she vanished. Those who knew her described her as curious, bright, and endlessly affectionate. She had striking blue-green eyes, a small freckle under her left eye, and a distinctive mark on her right pupil, a feature that made her instantly recognizable and tragically iconic. Her parents, Kate and Jerry, were both doctors. Madeleine was their first child, followed later by twins, a boy and a girl. From the outside, the McCanns looked like the portrait of a happy, educated family. Photos from their holiday show, Madeleine smiling in the sun, wrapped in her favorite pink blanket, her beloved cuddle cat never far from reach. That toy, a soft, well-worn feline, became a heartbreaking symbol of the search that would follow. Madeleine was full of life. She loved to sing, especially nursery rhymes. Her laughter was contagious, her energy endless. She liked pretending to be a teacher, lining up her stuffed animals as students. She was gentle with her siblings, often offering them snacks before taking one for herself. There was a tenderness to her that made her absence all the more jarring, like a vibrant light suddenly snuffed out. That spring of 2007, Madeleine was excited about their trip to Portugal, the beach, the warm air, the fun with other children. It was all a kind of magic to a child her age. Her parents later said that she was the happiest they'd ever seen her in the days leading up to her disappearance. And then she was gone. One minute, a little girl peacefully sleeping in a small resort apartment. The next, a void, a toy left behind, a birthday that would never be celebrated. What kind of world allows a child like Madeleine to simply disappear? Let us look deeper into the world she vanished from. The McCanns were not reckless parents. They were doctors, well-educated, rational, and by all accounts, deeply devoted to their children. Their decision to vacation in Praia da Luz, a quiet resort town in southern Portugal, was born from a desire for rest, familiarity, and safety. With 3 young children, Madeleine and 2-year-old twins, Sean and Amélie, they sought a place that felt like home away from home. And Praia da Luz, nicknamed Little Britain, for its heavy British tourist population, offered just that. English was widely spoken, the weather was warm, the resort catered to families, and there were on-site daycare centers, kids' clubs, and even babysitting services. The McCanns were joined by a close-knit group of friends, all medical professionals, vacationing together, 9 adults and 8 children in total. Every evening, the adults dined at the same restaurant, Tapas, just 50 meters from their apartments. From their table, they claimed they could see the windows of the rooms where their children slept. The plan was simple, and they stuck to it. Eat, take turns checking on the kids every 20-30 minutes. One family even brought a baby monitor. It wasn't unusual, it was the norm among their group. Their apartment 5A sat on the ground floor facing a small parking area. The layout was simple: bedroom, living area, and patio. The back terrace doors were often left slightly ajar for easy access. That night, May 3, 2007, was no different. At 8:30 p.m., Kate and Jerry left for dinner. They left the sliding doors unlocked. The children, Madeleine in her pink and white pajamas, the twins asleep in their cots, were left behind, as usual. This decision, made so casually, would come to haunt them for the rest of their lives. It's important to understand this. The McCanns didn't think they were being negligent. In that moment, they believed they were nearby, alert, attentive. But in hindsight, their idea of safety, leaving 3 children under 4 years old alone, even for short intervals, has been one of the most criticized aspects of the case. And as the night progressed, something unthinkable would happen within those walls. What really took place inside apartment 5A that night? The next part reveals the chilling timeline of events. It was around 8:30 p.m. when Kate and Jerry McCann left their 3 children alone in the apartment and headed to the Tapas restaurant to join their friends. The group had made a routine of it, checking on their sleeping kids every half hour, rotating turns like clockwork. At 9:05 p.m., Jerry walked back to the apartment for his check. He found the children seemingly fine, Madeleine asleep, the twins undisturbed. Yet something unsettled him. The bedroom door, which he was certain had been left slightly open, was now wide. He pushed it back to its original position, thought little of it, and returned to dinner. 25 minutes later, their friend Matthew Oldfield offered to check on the McCann children during his own round. He didn't enter fully, just listened at the doorway. All seemed quiet. He later admitted he wasn't sure if he had actually seen Madeleine in her bed. Then, at 10:00 p.m., Kate went to check for herself. She entered through the sliding patio door. Immediately, she noticed something was wrong. The bedroom door was wide open again. As she approached, it slammed shut, as if pushed by a sudden draft. When she opened it, what she saw would forever change her life. The window above Madeleine's bed was wide open. The shutter had been lifted. The twins were still asleep, but Madeleine's bed, empty. Her beloved stuffed animal, Cuddle Cat, lay beside her pillow. The child was gone. Panic surged. Kate ran back to the restaurant, shouting, "They've taken her!" Within minutes, the resort was in chaos. Staff, guests, and friends began searching every corridor, stairwell, and beach path. By dawn, there was still no trace of the little girl, and crucial minutes, perhaps hours, had already slipped away. What happened in that brief window of time? Who could have entered a family's private space, taken a sleeping child from her bed, and vanished without a sound? Was it a crime of opportunity, or something far more planned? Theories would swirl for years, but on that night, there was only confusion, terror, and one haunting certainty. Madeleine McCann was gone. Now the question turned to the world outside that apartment. How would investigators respond? And would justice ever be found? From the very beginning, the investigation was riddled with missteps. Portuguese police arrived at the McCann's apartment within hours of Madeleine's disappearance. But by then, the scene had already been contaminated. Friends, hotel staff, and even guests had walked in and out during the frantic search. No perimeter had been secured. No fingerprints were taken promptly, and perhaps most critically, border officials weren't alerted until the next day, allowing any possible abductor to vanish across national lines undetected. As media frenzy exploded across Europe, so did frustration. The McCanns, desperate and heartbroken, began making public appeals. They met with the Pope. They launched the Madeleine Fund, which raised over $2 million in less than a year. They hired private investigators. They held press conferences and TV interviews across continents. But while the world was searching, the investigation at home took a darker turn. In a shocking twist, Portuguese police began to suspect Kate and Jerry themselves. 4 months into the case, authorities floated a theory. Madeleine had been accidentally overdosed with a sedative and died in the apartment. Her parents, fearful of losing everything, allegedly hid the body and staged a fake kidnapping. The theory leaned heavily on the findings of 2 British sniffer dogs, one trained to detect blood, the other the scent of human decomposition. Both dogs had reacted inside the McCann's apartment, and even in the rental car they used weeks after the disappearance. Hair samples and fabric fragments from the vehicle further fueled suspicion, but the DNA tests were inconclusive. Forensic experts stated that the evidence wasn't strong enough to make any direct accusation. Still, the damage to the McCann's reputation was immense. Meanwhile, other suspects came and went. One man, Robert Murat, who lived nearby, was hounded by the press as the prime suspect, but was later cleared and won lawsuits against several British tabloids for defamation. Years passed, leads dried up, and then in 2011, the British government launched a new investigation, Operation Grange. Scotland Yard poured millions into reviewing evidence and chasing new leads. Detectives combed through thousands of witness statements, phone records, and tips. In 2020, investigators in Germany made a bombshell announcement. They had a new suspect. Christian Brückner, a convicted child sex offender who had lived in Praia da Luz at the time, was now the prime focus. According to prosecutors, Brückner had made disturbing comments about doing something terrible in the area the very night Madeleine disappeared. Evidence linked him to the region. He was already imprisoned for unrelated crimes. But now the spotlight turned to him. Yet even with this breakthrough, no formal charges were filed. No trial for Madeleine. No definitive answers. And in 2024, Brückner was acquitted of other sexual charges in Germany, while the investigation into Madeleine's case remained open but stalled. 17 years after her disappearance, the most expensive missing child case in British history was still unsolved. A girl vanished, and justice, it seemed, was still out of reach. But the world was watching, and the world was not silent. From the moment the news broke, the disappearance of Madeleine McCann became more than just a family's tragedy. It became a global obsession. The media coverage was relentless. Madeleine's face, her soft blonde hair, her wide eyes, the mark in her right iris, became instantly recognizable across the world. Her image was splashed across posters, front pages, and billboards in dozens of countries. For many, she became the symbol of every parent's worst nightmare. But with fame came fury. The McCanns were praised by some for refusing to stay silent, for keeping their daughter's face in the public eye, for challenging the system. But others questioned their parenting. Online forums speculated endlessly, often cruelly. The couple was vilified, especially after Portuguese authorities named them formal suspects, arguidos, even without hard evidence. Then came the documentaries, the tabloid rumors, the conspiracy theories. Some said they were complicit. Others insisted the police were covering up something far worse. At the height of it all, the family found themselves fighting not only for their daughter, but for their dignity. Still, there were signs of hope. Over 60 million people visited the Find Madeleine website. The Madeleine Fund drew millions in donations from celebrities and strangers alike. Supporters wrote letters, sent gifts, and prayed for her safe return. And yet, anger simmered beneath the surface, particularly over the use of public funds. By 2017, the British government had spent more than $19 million on the case. Critics questioned the cost. Why so much for one child? Why not for the thousands of other missing children without names the world recognized? But the answer, perhaps, lies in something deeper. Because in Madeleine's story, people saw something familiar. A child taken from a place that was supposed to be safe. A disappearance that could have happened to anyone. And that fear turned to obsession. In Germany, the public response to the naming of Christian Brückner in 2020 was explosive. Hope surged. Could this finally be the man? Yet when he was acquitted in 2024 of unrelated charges, disappointment returned. Once again, justice slipped away. And still, Kate McCann buys her daughter birthday presents, still writes her cards, still leaves space in her heart and in her home for the child who should have grown up before her eyes. The world may have moved on, but for many, especially for those who watch this case unfold, the silence remains deafening. But this story doesn't end here. One last question remains, and one final message must be heard. What would you do if your child vanished without a trace? If one evening they were tucked into bed, and by the time you returned, their voice was gone, their body missing, their future stolen, leaving behind only a toy, a memory, a question that would never let you sleep again. Madeleine McCann was only 3 years old. She had never crossed a street alone. She couldn't tie her shoes. She didn't understand fear in the way adults do. But someone did. Someone saw her, took her, and for 17 years has kept that truth buried in silence. No matter the theories, no matter the police errors, the media storms, the false accusations, one fact remains. A little girl disappeared, and no one has been held accountable. If Madeleine is alive today, she would be 21 years old, a young woman possibly unaware of her past, or living with scars no one can see. If she is not, then she deserves peace, and her family deserves answers. This story is not just about a missing child. It's about every child who vanishes unnoticed, every parent left without closure, every failure of a system meant to protect the innocent. So what can we do? We can refuse to forget. We can demand better investigations, louder alerts, stronger protections. We can share her story, not for spectacle, but for remembrance. And in doing so, we keep the light on for those still lost in the dark. Because somewhere, someone knows what happened. And until that truth comes forward, we will keep asking over and over again, where is Madeleine McCann?